Today, we're looking at a brown ink by KWZ, their Iron Gall Gold. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below, but if you've got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire video. If you'd like, you can follow me over on Instagram as an ink guy. Also, if you're new here, I do fountain pen ink reviews daily, so I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Lamy Oster with a broad nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take my notes for this video. In order to have a standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, although I do use more papers, and those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading throughout the writing, which is quite nice. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading that's going on, and 6 seconds to dry. Medium is by far the darkest tone on the page, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine does show color variation, medium shows none, and that's what we got in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, still has some very nice shading, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is again the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows color variation, which we got. The medium shows none, we got none. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading. The extra fine slightly darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, nice shading, 7 seconds to dry. Medium, much darker than the extra fine, darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows color variation, which we got. The medium showed none, and we got none. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a very light brown at the bottom. We do see some hints of a yellow about 2/3 the way up, and then that pale color that we've come to see with these KWZ Iron Gall inks. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And we do see that that light brown is starting to form a line at the bottom, but a lot of it's still pushing up. We still see some of that yellow, but on the very top, that pale, whatever that is very obvious there. This one, I let dry for 24 hours before I dunk it into water. That line on the bottom is very definite, very there. The brown is only slightly moving up. The yellow is still very noticeable, as is that pale tone that we get at the top. This one I let dry for 72 hours before I dunk it into water. And what we see is that brown is still very much there, about as there as it was after 24. The yellow, it's basically like the 24 one. It's very unchanged. So after 24 hours, I didn't see any additional aging benefit from this ink. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would feel okay using this in a note-taking situation if I had to go back and highlight. Water is lifting the darkest tones, but leaving all of that kind of gray that we were seeing on the bottom, that gray-brown on the bottom from the chromatographies, that's still very much into the paper. So it's not enough to get it off the paper, but it was enough to get it out of my pens. Pen Flush is doing everything that water did, and only a slight bit more in some of the area where I think the ink was a little lighter on the paper. 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the paper, but you should not need that to get this out of your pen. I test ink viscosity or flow by using a tilt test, and I'll link that somewhere here. And for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Put the data onto a bell curve or standard deviation for it to be easily understood. KWZ's Iron Gall Gold has a viscosity of 2.46, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. KWZ's Iron Gall Gold has an average dry time of 11 seconds, making this a fast-drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Iron Gall Gold, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice blue, and I chose Robert Oster's Bondi Blue. The second writing sample was done on black and red, Franklin Christoph, and Limon paper. Here we're looking at black and red notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has, good lord papers, quit fighting me, no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading that's happening. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading that's going on, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is by far the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation and a medium shows none, and that's about what we got in the writing. Franklin Christoph, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 had no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, still have spots of shading throughout, 5 seconds to dry. Medium, much darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine does show a little bit of color variation, and we get a little, and the medium shows none, and we got none. Last up, Limon paper. Normally not done real well for fountain pens, but I like finding the inks that will work. And here we have no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, a couple spots of shade that occur. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading still, look at the word brown, darker to lighter, nice, 6 seconds to dry. Medium, by far the darkest tone on the page, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation, and we get it. The medium shows none, and we got none, and that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of KWZ's Iron Gall Gold? This is much darker in ink than I was expecting. I've really come to enjoy the golden brown yellows that are out there, and that's really what I was kind of expecting, and what I got was much more of a brown. It makes me wonder if my experience was tainted a little bit because of the sample being moved from its original vial, or original container, into a vial. I'm not sure, and I'm not willing to risk getting a bottle just to find out, but if that is what it is, the golden brown is not what I'm going to get on the page. It's going to be a very different brown, which I don't care for. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I found a medium flow fine pen, put down a decent tone, and it even gave out some color variation, which is really nice in the writing to see that shading. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.